10 years ago, I had an idea to set up Law Legal Action Worldwide. And at the time, it was just an idea. How could we change access to justice for the most vulnerable, the most far-to-reach victims and survivors of human rights violations and abuses? 10 years later, we're 80 staff working in 14 countries in some of the most horrific conflicts around the world in Southeast Asia, Africa and the Middle East, with 28 amazing partners, women's rights organisations, legal organisations. But most importantly, we have been assisting tens of thousands of victims and survivors of human rights violations and abuses, helping them to regain their dignity, to find some hope, and starting with asking them what kind of justice do they want and how can we help them to achieve it.
In 2017, brutal violence by the Myanmar military forced thousands of Rohingya, described as the most persecuted minority in the world, to flee their homes in Myanmar's Rakhine State. To this day, most Rohingya remain in sprawling camps in neighbouring Bangladesh.
The Rohingya have repeatedly shared their stories with the world. The mass killings, the torture and the severe sexual violence committed against them and their family members by the Myanmar military. Since 2018, at Legal Action Worldwide, we have been working on legal processes to ensure that the perpetrators of these mass atrocities endured by the Rohingya are held to account.
In 2019, 3 Rohingya survivors travelled all the way from the camps in Cox's Bazar to The Hague for hearings on provisional measures in the genocide case between Myanmar and the Gambia. Their presence in the courtroom was explicitly highlighted by the Gambian legal team during proceedings. In 2023, 7 Rohingya, including survivors of sexual violence, gave testimony to an Argentinian court during ongoing investigation into the Myanmar military. This was the very first time that Rohingya witnesses testified in person in court.
The Shanti Mohila and our wider network of survivor advocates are most definitely on the front lines for the fight for justice for the Rohingya community.
Law works with grassroots organisations from across Myanmar, representing all ethnicities, to document these crimes, particularly gender-based violence, and seeks to empower survivors to pursue justice. 1 in 3 Sri Lankan women will experience physical or sexual violence. Law works with a group of inspiring Sri Lankan women lawyers aiming to change this, the Gender Justice Legal Network.
එක දවසක් මගේ පිටිපස්සට මේ උණු වතුර වැක්කිරෙව්වා. ඒ වෙලාවේ මට සිහියක් පතක්වත් නැහැ. මම මොනවද කරන්න කියලා මට තේරෙන්නේ නැහැ. ඊට පස්සේ මට මොනවද මන් දන්නේ බොණ්ඩ දුන්නා. එතනින් එහාට මන් දන්නේ නැහැ මොනවද උනේ කියන්න. ටික වෙලාවක් යනකොට මට සිහිය ආවා. සිහිය එනකොට මගේ මූණ ගොඩාක් රිදෙනවා. මට තේරෙන්නේ නැහැ කියලා. ටික වෙලාවකින් මම දැක්කා මේ මිනිහා මගේ ඇඟ උඩ ඉඳගෙන ඉන්නවා. පච්ච ගහලා තිබ්බා මගේ මූණේ. මට ගොඩක් කරදර වුණා තමයි. හැබැයි මට ආයෙම නැගිටින්න ඕනි. මම දන්නවා මට ඒ ශක්තිය තියෙනවා කියලා. මට ආයෙම නැගිටින්නයි ඕනේ.
In 2013, in Somalia, women that reported rape were more likely to be arrested than the perpetrator of the crime. To address this problem, Law and the Minister of Women and Human Rights Development commenced the drafting of the Sexual Offences Bill, a critical step for survivors and to ensure accountability of perpetrators.
Vital legislations on human rights such as the soon-to-be approved Sexual Offences Bill provide the tools to fight impunity of sexual perpetrators.
Law also works directly with survivors. Operating in 6 IDP camps in Mogadishu, Law has collected more than 1,600 complaints, supported victims to report more than 400 complaints to police, and secured more than 200 convictions for gender-based violence, including instances of rape and gang rape of children.
And those people in IDP camps who knows that if there is a young girl who is raped and cannot get justice, they get help when they meet with the professional lawyers who has been trained by law.
From victim to survivor to advocate, a network of 36 female community champions share information and advocate within their communities, empowering other survivors to come forward and demand change.
One NGO is taking legal action against the government.
Legal Action Worldwide filed a complaint against the government of South Sudan on behalf of 30 women who say they were raped by members of the military.
Have there been any cases like this in the past, specifically to do with South Sudan?
There hasn't been any case that's been taken against the government since the conflict began in 2013, which is shocking considering tens of thousands of women and girls have been subjected to brutal sexual violence.
You're asking, what can we do to end gender-based violence? We need women at the forefront. We need survivors at the forefront. When we talk about survivors of sexual and gender-based violence, let it be the survivors to speak for themselves. Let us have survivors on those tables, making decisions, looking at the policies and saying, this is what the policy should look like.
In 2023, nearly 500 aid workers were injured, kidnapped, or killed worldwide. National staff are overwhelmingly the victims of attacks.
There seems to be an exponential increase in the killings of humanitarian aid workers, as well as the kidnapping. The problem is that the world has become a much, much more violent place. This is why working with law is so important, is that it is done, as you have said, with complete impunity. So what can we do? I think the combination of your organization and mine is ideal for this, along with a third party, which would be key member states. You build not only rights of those who are entitled to them, but you build a foundation for a campaign.
It is hard to overstate the gravity of the violence which has taken place in Ethiopia since November 2020. We have documented mass killings, rape, starvation, destruction of schools and medical facilities, forced displacement, and mass arbitrary detention amounting to both war crimes and crimes against humanity.
In 2021, Tigrayan communities approached law for help to hold Ethiopia accountable. In 2022, Law and its partners filed the first cases on their behalf against Ethiopia at the African Commission on Human and People's Rights. For the first time in 10 years, the African Commission issued provisional measures against Ethiopia, calling for an end to extrajudicial killings, sexual violence, and torture, and to allow humanitarian aid into Tigray. In Lebanon, tens of thousands of female domestic migrant workers are routinely subjected to abuse under the kafala system, a system which discriminates and allows almost no access to justice for victims. Action had to be taken. And in 2020, Law filed the criminal case in Lebanon arguing slavery, slave trading, torture, racial and gender discrimination against the former employer and recruiter of MH, an Ethiopian migrant domestic worker who was enslaved for more than 7 years in Beirut. The case is ongoing and inspiring a movement across Lebanon and the Middle East to end the oppressive kafala system.
I became involved with law due to the fact that my 2-year-old son Isaac was killed in the Beirut blast. Because of that report and because of Antonia and her passion, that I got the drive to pursue justice for Isaac. And I think Antonia and the team have been excellent in really exploring the various options and explaining to the victims what the possibilities are. It can be very frustrating because you feel that justice should be a no-brainer, but really you have to fight for attention. And then, and there's so many things going on in the world that, trying to get your situation in front of the right people is very difficult. So, having a champion like Legal Action Worldwide and Antonia just makes all the difference.
Victims and survivors of gendered crimes during the Lebanese civil war have rarely spoken about their experiences. UN Women and Law set about giving them a voice.
اغتصبونا بكل الأشكال، اغتصبونا بطرق ما بتتخيلوها، صاروا يتداوروا علينا لحد ما صاروا يغتصبونا بأشياء لموها على الأرض.
Law submitted 477 pages of testimonial evidence to the United Nations Working Group on Enforced and Involuntary Disappearances, seeking information on the truth and whereabouts of people who disappeared during the conflict.
طبعاً مثل حكايتي مرة أنها تروح على الدوائر الحكومية أو تبحث عنه كان كتير صعب بالنسبة إلي، والحمد لله رب العالمين. يعني إيش بدي أسوي؟ بتمنى هيك، بس بتمنى يعني هيك أعرف مصيره وأعرف يعني أي شيء عنه.